This is a Touchstone Publishers presentation, your trusted source of leadership knowledge.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. Well, Glenn Daniels, Director of Operations here at Touchstone Publishers, going solo today. Our guest did not quite make it today. I don't know whether something came up. I'm sure something came up. Otherwise, I'm sure she would have been here. And we'll try to reschedule her when she does get here. I thought, though, I'd take a moment and answer a couple questions about Touchstone Publishers, the direction we're going in, and why we're moving to a powerful source of information. Touchstone Publishers are going to start focusing now on an online magazine. This online magazine will be designed to help everyone become better leaders. Everyone to become better leaders. Our focus will continue to, of course, be the nonprofit, government financed, but good leadership skills are good leadership skills. It's an art, it's a science. So I want to ask everyone that you kind of play along with us here, help us develop it, grow with us. And we'll have it all on one big website here soon, just like all the other guys. We'll have YouTube channels, we'll have curated articles, we'll have journalists sharing their thoughts. We'll have you play with us and share your thoughts and write for us and interview with us. As you know, today was our Essential Leadership Skills, a discussion with TEDx or TED Talk speakers. I have found that this has become a very popular area, and it doesn't matter what we talk about here, what every TEDx or TED Talk speaker speaks about, but it has become very popular, and people are really kind of tuning in on that, really get into that. We still have a subject matter expert. Yesterday, for example, we talked with Paul Rudder. Now, he's a cruise director, but he's a subject matter expert in being a cruise director, but also an expert on customer service. As he said yesterday, wowing the customer. A couple good hints he gave out yesterday. In case you missed the show, go back and listen to it. But a couple great hints he gave out yesterday. One of them was simply to make sure that you had that person signed up for the next event before the last event was over with. So they would collect a small deposit of it, as many people as they could, on the cruise ship before it docked for the final dock. Said the deposit be $100. Well, 98% of that people who gave the $100 went ahead and booked the next cruise. Wouldn't that be better than having to market all these people again, remarket? So 98% of the people who gave the $100 said, hey, I'll take this cruise in a year, or however long the time period was. They took that $100 and applied it to another cruise. That's a very powerful spot to be in. How can you synergistically use that for yourself, your own organization? All right, fantastic. So we're just going to go ahead and bring Brittany on board here. She's here. I assume something happened to her. So let's go ahead and get her on board, and I'll just let her know, hey, Brittany, how are you? We are already recording and moving, and because we got a little bit of a late start, so I was just talking about yesterday's show. I'm glad you're here with us. Let me just bring everybody up to speed a little bit about Brittany, because Brittany is one of these power-packed corporate leadership trainers. Now, when we have corporate leadership trainers, they're usually subject matter experts. However, she is a subject matter expert, but her TED Talk was fantastic. I listened to it more than a couple of times, and last night I decided to kind of just really sit down and listen to it. And I got to be honest with you, Brittany, it hit some keys and some chords inside of me that kind of started bringing me a little bit to tears. Just because some of the struggles that I've had in the last year and a half, we're not going to talk about those. We're going to let you talk about yours. But I want everybody to know that you're a coach and an author, and you help corporate leaders live with more authentic power, I would say. Now, Brittany is known for her high energy, engaging approach to learning and development. I'm going to add one other thing into that, her passion approach to training and development. Brittany, I have many, many, many questions for you. I want to get started, but also want to give you a chance here to say hi and welcome on board.
Yes, thank you so much, Glenn, for having me. I'm super excited to be here today and share space with you and your community because, like you said, I do find joy in the work that I do. And I don't take it lightly when people trust me with their communities to share.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you could tell that just from listening to you on your TED Talk, and we'll talk about that. But I would like to hit you with my traditional first question, and not including your TED Talk without giving away anything about your TED Talk, but what is unique, powerful, and maybe a need to know about you or your TED Talk or your organization? What's unique and powerful?
I would say the thing that was probably unique and powerful about me is my ability to help people see beyond boundaries. You know, I am that person that helps people think outside of the box. You don't have to have certain accolades, certain certifications, certain degrees to do the things that you say you want. Sometimes we just tell ourselves we have to have things done a certain way in order for it to work or be powerful or be effective or for us to be respected or taken seriously, whether it's in the workplace or the marketplace. And I'm that person who challenges those beliefs about that, because
Yeah,
most of what I've done has been outside of those realms.
it has been. And well, again, your TED Talk was just super, but I want to ask you about the journey from the time you decided that you wanted to do the TED Talk and put this story out there to the time you actually filmed it. Now, you did yours during the pandemic, so you didn't get on stage, I believe. Is that correct? You had to film it?
Right.
Okay. Well, I guess they're all filmed, but you didn't do it from a stage. But still, tell us about that journey from the time you said, okay, I'd like to do this. I think I can put that story out there to the time you actually made the tape.
I started out super excited, and then once I realized I was accepted and it was really real, and I was like, ooh, what am I doing?
What did I do? What did I do?
Right. So I was excited. I was like, I feel like this can really help other people understand, just connect with the humanness of who we are behind the titles and the polished profiles online. We are people, regardless of what your title is, whatever your background is, that at the bottom of it all, we're all people. And that's one of the things that I really appreciated about the pandemic. I mean, typically most people aren't saying they appreciate anything about it, but I appreciate the fact that it really humbled us as humanity, I think, because it put us in a space where we all had to acknowledge that at the core, we are human. And there are certain things about being a human none of us can escape. And it doesn't matter what your status is. The pandemic kind of put us all at a level playing field when it came to certain areas of our life. And so for me, just sharing that was scary once I realized, oh, I'm committed. There's no
There's no turning
right
back.
and it was a very kind of uncertain journey too, because it happened in the pandemic. They were really trying to push to have it on stage. So it was actually supposed to have been produced that October of 2020. And then a couple of weeks, like literally a couple of weeks before, they said, hey, we were trying to get this to happen in person, put in some extra precautions, but we're going to have to postpone. So I was already nervous about sharing the story, but then right before it was time, there was another curveball thrown, because we learned that we would not be going to do it on stage. We didn't know what the next steps were going to be. We didn't even know when it was going to actually happen. So that actually threw some more uncertainty in the mix too.
Wow. So the uncertainty of when you're going to do it, how it's going to get done, that got added on to what is normal, the uncertainty of how am I going to perform?
Right.
I think we put a lot of weight and pressure on ourselves. Hey, this could potentially be listened to by millions upon millions of people. So we put that weight onto ourselves. Now, how hard did you have to practice to do this? How much did you practice?
One thing about me, I try to just be my authentic self in whatever space that I'm in. And so honestly, I kind of understood the idea of what I wanted to speak on. So when I first applied, it was just kind of a general idea of what I wanted to share. But eventually I realized that I needed to go a little bit deeper. And honestly, it wasn't until the night before it wasn't until the night before I spoke that I understood what I was going to speak on. So I kind of understood different highlights that I wanted to share, but I was not, it didn't come together for me in the fullness of what it was supposed to be until the night before.
Now, I want to kind of take a moment here too, because I know we got a lot of coaches who coach people to give TEDx talks and TEDx speakers. They're just freaking out. I know they're just going crazy saying, well, wait a minute, how did you? But you know what, ladies and gentlemen, go listen to her talk. Let me put the title still up there, okay? And I'll put the URL on there. I'm not suggesting that you guys, especially if you're new speaking, that you try to do it this way. But I will suggest if you have the amount of passion that she shows through this, that it can work. That it can work. I know coaches are like, wait a minute, Glenn, don't give that advice. I got to give that advice because it worked here in this case. The amount of passion that went there. I want to go to something else though, because I found this cute but interesting, and I want you to do the same thing here. You offered a disclaimer in your TED Talk. Do you remember that? I mean, after that little disclaimer, you're about a third through it. Do you remember doing that?
Was it about the coffee or something?
No? It was a kind of a funny disclaimer. He kind of said, okay, look, I'm telling you this, but I'm not a medical doctor, so don't go to it. You should talk to somebody.
Right,
But,
right.
yeah, so I thought, that's probably something we all should be aware of. You got to do what I like to, because you were saying you got to do what's right for you. And this is what worked for me. Give it a shot. So I like that. That's why I wanted to bring that to you. Just talk about that real briefly. No, Brittany is not a medical doctor. Not
at all. So, just, and it's actually kind of symbolic, I guess, to how I flow, how I operate, in terms of not necessarily coloring within the lines all the time.
Let's get into that, because I noticed you mentioned that, and I kind of got attracted to the thought of the flow from the mind. Tell us a little bit more about how your flow from the mind works, and then how we can transport that. I mean, as you're telling it, we'll be able to transport it to ourselves a little bit, but tell us about the flow from the mind.
Yeah. So when you watch my TED Talk, you'll understand more about why I talk about this, and how it even connected to some very personal things that happened to me physically. But what it did was those challenges prompted me to learn more about my body and how things function. And so one of the things, as we move and we do things in life, whatever goals we have, whatever dreams we have, a lot of times we focus on a lot of the external things that we think we should do. And the truth is, everything must first flow from the mind. If your mind is not centered properly, then you're going to be at risk to just be basically thrown off track, distracted by sparkle, things that don't even really contribute to your end goal, but it just looks like you're doing something, like you look busy, and it's not necessarily productive. And so even science supports that our mind does the heavy lifting when it comes to our physical eyesight, in a way that I was unaware of before I went through my own physical challenges with my eyesight.
Right. Yeah. And I'm going to ask you about that a little bit later, because you said something a little bit later that we want to really kind of explode and explore. It was just a lot of good things coming out of this. But I want to ask you something else that you said, and I'd like for you to go ahead and finish the thought here. You said something along the lines of what you would like to do is lead others through the darkness, which equals lead others through the darkness. So, and I think you said, which leads to what a vision really is.
Right. So a lot of times when we think about being a visionary, we think about it from the perspective of when you can see clearly, when you can see the next steps clearly, when you understand, when you have a kind of predictable solution in place. And true leadership is about being able to lead people even when you can't see. Like, you got to be able to see even when you cannot see. That is what visionary leadership is. It's about being able to take things that are not necessarily structured, calculated, and be able to make sense of it all and lead people with transparency, even when you don't know it all. It's not about my best leadership, the best leadership I've ever worked under, it was not because they knew all the answers. It was not because I could always go to them and just know they had the answers. It was because they owned their humanity. They owned the fact that they didn't know everything. They didn't try to sell me on the fact they didn't know anything, but they showed me they cared enough to try to find a solution and to let me know that I was not flawed for my fears or my uncertainties, because they shared some of those same things, but they were equipped in a way that sometimes I was not, to actually be able to see, even though it was dark.
So what you're saying, the visionary leadership visionary means you may not have all the answers, but you still got to march towards your goal. Is that the coaching you're giving me? Still got to march toward that vision that I have?
Yes, absolutely. And one of my mentors always says, be committed to the vision, but not attached to how you get there. So when you adopt that type of mindset, you realize it doesn't matter if you're leading through a time of certainty or a time of uncertainty. If you release that attachment to how you thought you should be able to get to a goal, it opens you up and positions you to be creative enough to find new solutions. And in the meantime, you grow, you stretch yourself, and in turn, you stretch your team, because now you guys are doing things that were not even on the plate before, things that you had not even allowed yourself to delve far enough to even explore as potential solutions or opportunities to show up in excellence.
Okay. And I like that because you're allowing yourself to explore a little bit more. What is unique about your TED Talk? And I want to get into this a little bit more, but sometimes we don't see things, or we can't really see the future so much because of disruptions. The metaphor you use is your personal struggle. And you shared it, so let's share it again a little bit. You lost your sight. And that was a disruption. But you made the point that a disruption is powerful. Is that your thought there? Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Totally unexpected. This was very a random. It was not like I had issues with my sight in the past. And so you imagine just going through your life on a daily basis, seeing fine. And then all of a sudden your sight, your physical sight, is literally disrupted. And in the heat of the moment, a lot of times your first instinct is to panic. But when you really accept full ownership of who you are as a visionary leader, you understand that there's never really a real reason to panic. Okay. Because when you are a visionary leader, you are a solutions-based thinker, meaning it doesn't matter what the what the circumstances are, you're always able to see solutions. You're always able to frame your mindset to develop solutions. And it may not come in that very instant, but you can rest in the knowing that based on who I am, being affirmed in your own identity as a leader, I always find solutions. And so it clears the space for you to actually say, what are my options now? What's available to me now? And so the physical disruption I experienced was much like the figurative disruption we all experienced due to the pandemic. We were blindsided. I mean, who saw it coming? You were just living life as normal one day, and then the next day, whole states were shutting down.
Yeah.
Companies were closing their doors. People were being shut up in their houses. Life as we knew it was completely disrupted.
Different. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was totally disrupted. And I put this statement, I think, because I love that statement you made during your TED Talk. Even when your sight is blocked, you still must have a vision. How did you come up with that statement, that thought? Obviously it's based upon your sight being disrupted, but you still had a vision. How did you come up with that?
I honestly leaned heavily on a sermon that I had seen by Pastor Michael Todd.
Perfect.
Earlier that year. And in that sermon, he talked about sight is what you see when your eyes are wide open. Vision is what you see when your eyes are closed. And so that really inspired a lot of how I made my moves during a time of disruption, during a time of darkness, because sight is not even really necessary as long as you have vision. As long as, even when my physical sight was disrupted, I could see with my eyes closed in a sense because I knew my house well enough to where I could navigate and move through my house. I won't say it was like with complete ease, but I was able to move and navigate regardless of the fact that my sight was not 100%. And it's the same way when we show up in the workplace, when we show up in the marketplace, we have to give ourselves the ability to see even with our eyes closed.
Love that. Just give yourself the ability to see even with your eyes closed, even when you can't. You made a statement there, and this is going to lead to the next question, but you made a statement that I found kindred soul in. You told the doctor that you're going to have 100% eyesight back, if not more. That took a level of confidence. How'd you get that level of confidence?
Yeah, honestly, faith. Everything I do, my faith is completely threaded through it. And so when you understand your identity, when you believe in who you are, when you believe in how you move, how you function, how you flow, it doesn't even matter how your team has historically functioned. It doesn't matter how the people you are responsible for have historically operated. It didn't matter in that moment what the historical results were that my doctor typically got, because I considered myself atypical. I consider myself someone who puts things into action to get atypical results. And so I expected nothing other than that in this situation. We talked about earlier, everything must first flow from the mind. So you have to decide, what am I going to subscribe to? What thoughts and beliefs am I going to subscribe to and accept to be true for my life? One of the things that, I think we struggle with, and this is like my mindset side of things, is we typically think because we think a thought that is true. It's like, of course I wouldn't think something that's a lie about myself. And the truth is, just because you think something, it does not make it true. And once you understand that you have to filter your own thoughts, it then sets the foundation for you prioritizing being able to filter other people's thoughts as well. What other people say or speak over you, what other people project to be your future. You learn, if I have to filter my own thoughts and figure out which thoughts are true about me, which thoughts I'm going to accept to be true for myself, then I'm automatically going to have to filter what other people speak over me as well.
Wow, very powerful. And I want to drive you a little bit further on that, because during the TED Talk, you mentioned that you have been almost a lifelong learner of personal development, personal improvement. Tell me 1, 2, 3, 500 books. I'm just kidding, but give me a couple books that you would say, okay, listen, I didn't write it, but go read it.
The first one I would say is The Breakthrough Sold Separately by Brandy Harvey.
Okay, Breakthrough Souls. Okay.
That book really challenged me. It encouraged me to challenge everything I ever thought to be true about life. And so because I finally stepped into this space where I was like, let me challenge some stuff, it really empowered me to challenge the things that everything, the way we eat, the way we think, the way we spend money, challenge everything you ever thought to be true about life. And this book taught me that either it's whatever you find, it's either going to be evidence to support what you've always believed, or you're going to find evidence that stretches you to believe that there's something bigger than just the hand-me-down beliefs that you've adopted from your family, your community, from your surroundings. And so it really gave me a sense of ownership over my own beliefs and the way I decide to live my life. Because honestly, we really take on a lot of hand-me-down beliefs without even realizing it.
And that's a good way to put it, I think, just to share with you the hand-me-down beliefs. I mean, we follow those because we can see them. But as you say, a good visionary needs to understand the goal where they can't really be seen, have that vision. So the hand-me-down beliefs, that's something someone just put out in front of us. We can see that. But if you challenge those assumptions, then it goes different. You could possibly change some of these things, and you would possibly change some of these things. Am I right in that thought, or can you add anything else to that might clarify that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are just comfortable in our own communities, and you have to, if you are really committed to tapping into your fullest potential, if you're really committed to believing bigger than what you've ever seen, you've got to go places you've never been. And it's not even, you can start where you are. Go to a different type of restaurant than you typically do. Go to a different side of town than you typically do, because you have to expose yourself to the way different people think, the way different people live, the values that are important to them, the different methodologies and strategies that people use who are just one zip code away. It makes a huge difference when you intentionally put yourself in spaces where you are the minority, where you are someone taking a seat and learning. We associate leadership with always being in the forefront, but some of the best leaders are the ones who learn how to take a seat and listen. Take a seat, listen, watch, observe, and really understand people.
You're right. Exactly. And that's funny. I think that's a really powerful lesson, is that, leaders don't necessarily have to be out in front. They're not necessarily out in front. Thank you for that. That's a great lesson. I want you to take some time and discuss MOVE. MOVE. This was a process, if I understood correctly, that you used to help you grow past the challenges of losing your sight. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So the word itself, move, means that regardless of whether you're in a space of clarity or a space of chaos and confusion, the key characteristic of a visionary leader is to always move. Make sure you move. You do not have the luxury of standing still. You don't have the luxury of saying, I just don't know, and I don't feel like figuring it out. You have to move. That is a part of your responsibility as a visionary leader. And movement doesn't mean that you have to take huge leaps. It just means that you're committed to pressing forward. And so the MOVE framework is mindset, outlook, viability, and execution. These are the things that you need. You need them in your toolkit so that you can lead with clarity and with confidence, regardless of what the outer circumstances look like.
And regardless of your position or title.
Yes. It does not matter if you are the VP, or if you are just an associate, or if you're just entry level. These are principles that you can live by and adopt, whether it's in your personal or professional life, which is why in my TED Talk, I wanted to include the personal side of things and how it played out, and also the professional side of things and how it can play out, because we are people behind our profession. And the quicker organizations really honor that, the quicker people in leadership spaces honor that we are people behind the profession, the much quicker they will actually attain the goals that they are setting out to do. You cannot dismiss the human behind the work.
You can't. Tell us about mindset. Mindset. First, what you had to do personally, and then a professional mindset. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So earlier we talked about everything must first flow from the mind. And one of the things, I'll just go ahead and share, one of the things that research has shown is that our eyes take in light.
Right.
but our mind interprets what to do with that light. So in order for us to actually interpret what objects are and stuff, our mind has to do that. It has to facilitate that process. So even in your physical eyesight, if it requires your mind to interpret that, to make sense of it all, that means everything else must first flow from your mind. And so you have to have your mindset framed for winning, a mindset that is framed for commitment, a mindset that is framed for transparency, and the ability to motivate others. You have to have that type of mindset if it is your ultimate goal to engage your team, to keep them, keep your key players, keep them involved, keep them engaged, keep them trusting your leadership so that they're able to take action. Because people who can't trust you, people who feel like you're not going to be transparent with them, people who feel afraid to even share with you their struggles, their challenges, their insecurities, those are the people who are going to shrink back, and it costs you in every way, the literal sense and the figurative sense. Even if you look at statistics for organizations, people feel insecure on their jobs, they don't feel comfortable enough to stretch their imagination, to generate those great ideas that in turn generate more revenue for your organization. So creating those safe spaces by having your own mindset primed for success is so crucial to how well you're able to develop leaders through disruption.
No, that's amazing, because coach me if I'm wrong on this, but what you're saying is that if I put the mindset together that my team is going to trust me, and that's my mindset, my team's going to trust me, so they feel comfortable enough to come to me with a suggestion for a change or a better way to do these type of things or share their opinions and thoughts. That's the mindset of a visionary, because they're leading that way. They're allowing their team to grow. Is that how I should be looking at that, or did I miss the mindset point?
Yeah, absolutely. People need to be able to trust you, and they need to be able to trust you with their great ideas. They need to be able to trust that when they share these ideas, whether you have constructive or really great, constructive criticism is great as well, but even if you have good or constructive feedback to give them, they can trust that because they know that you don't typically tear them down. They know that you're a very straightforward type of person who doesn't just say, no, this isn't good, but you explain why this may not actually fit the organization's vision, or why the organization may not have the capacity to fulfill it. And so it kind of opens the line of communication so that people don't shut down. People don't say, I think I see a different way we could be doing this. And then they just don't share for fear of being shot down or fear of losing credibility because you tell them this is like far-fetched, this is just too much, I didn't ask you for this, or this is how we've always done it, And so having that mindset, having your own mindset, because you have to view yourself as a leader as the mindset of your team, regardless of who you are, what position you hold, you are the mindset for your team. And so everything must first flow from you. You set the standard, you set the culture, whether it's at home or at work.
I follow you because that makes a lot of sense. Talk about O.
O is outlook.
Okay.
So obviously, if you're a visionary leader, you've got to be able to have some capacity to see in the future what's possible for you, what's available, like what are some options? What do I believe to be true about what's possible for myself and for my team? And so, because sometimes as a leader, because we have limited outlook, we then limit the outlook of those attached to us, because when they bring ideas to us, we feel intimidated, we feel uncertain, because we know as a result of implementing what they bring to us, it's going to stretch us in a way that's uncomfortable. And so sometimes we're just inclined to kind of, decline the things that they share with us.
What's interesting, though, if you did that simple exercise, what you were saying earlier, putting yourself into an uncomfortable position, maybe going to a different restaurant, driving home, you hear that 1,000 times, driving home a different way. But maybe if you spent a Saturday or Sunday afternoon in a different zip code, you'd be uncomfortable. So therefore, when your coworkers bring you something, you'd have a different outlook on it because you're uncomfortable. Would that be a good exercise that you would think about doing?
Absolutely. Even as a child growing up, one of the things that I now appreciate more than ever is how intentional my parents were about putting me in uncomfortable spaces where I was the only person that looked like me, sounded like me. I can recall going to swimming lessons as a young girl, and I think I was the only person that looked like me.
Yeah.
And on my softball teams, like the first softball teams I was on, I was the only person that looked like me. And at the time, I didn't really understand. I was like, what? Like, why am I not with my people, so to speak? You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
the
exactly.
people who look like me, sound like me, talk like me, we are just naturally inclined to crave more of that. But what my parents were doing was just trying to stretch me and put me in places where they felt like I would be exposed to more than what I saw on a daily basis. I could learn how to facilitate conversations with people who have differing ideas, differing beliefs than me, and still respect it, even if I don't accept it for myself. And so, even thinking about outside of the workplace, can I take my children somewhere different? Can I take my children to start taking certain kind of lessons where they're going to be the minority or be amongst a super diverse
Group.
space of
Yeah.
individuals? So yeah, absolutely. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that's what's going to set you apart in the workplace, marketplace, at home, community. When you are comfortable with being uncomfortable, yes, it'll be scary, it'll be uncertain, that'll never go away, but you'll always be able to say, I've been here before, because I you will feel empowered because you took action. You didn't wait for something to happen to you for you to have to learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. You took action. You were proactive. You empowered yourself to say, I am going to take the first step to making myself uncomfortable. So you take your power back and you really understand more about your capabilities as a person.
I want to move to V, but I want to see if this ties back to the O and the M, because if I have the mindset that I have a safe, trusted environment, it's easier for my coworkers to step out and to have a different outset, onlook of life, a different outlook of life, because they know it's safer. Just like you and I both kind of grew up the same way, it sounds like, where we were put into situations where we were the only people who looked the way we did. But yet we had a safe home environment. We had a safe environment, in the neighborhood, safer in the neighborhood. Those things tie together, I think. Do you think so?
Yes, I love the fact that Glenn, you said we had a safe home to go back to. And so that is what you are creating as a leader, is a safe home for your team, a safe home for yourself, because sometimes we create environments that are hostile for ourselves. We create the standard or this expectation that we know it all, that we have all the answers, that we cannot afford to make a misstep. And if you really want to lead in a powerful way, you need to do the exact opposite. Just create a safe hub for people to be raw, authentic, to really show up as the fullness of who they are, instead of beating yourself up about making mistakes. Use those as teachable moments for your team. Hey guys, let's run through this real quick. I messed up, whoopsie, this week. You all may not even know this, but I'm putting it out here so that we can see how I work through this. Or I'm going to ask you all, what are some potential ways we can work through this together? Opening up that conversation so that even when your team makes mistakes, they're not hiding the mistakes. They're not trying to push them under a rug and then causing a ripple effect down the line, but they're openly sharing, hey, I need support. Hey, I messed up. How can we work through this, so that you're able to really leverage those mistakes for learning?
Oh, that's so good. Tell us about V. V is in Victor.
V is viability. So you can have the mindset, you can have the outlook, but do you have the tools to really put it into action? Taking a step back and really being honest about, do I have what I need to really carry this thing out in excellence, and not just relying on your own perspective of that. Also tapping into your team and asking them, what do you need? Because sometimes, I remember reading a study that talked about subtle changes that organizations could make to retain more of their employees. And Glenn, it was, a lot of times employers go straight to, oh, maybe we should have provide lunches for them, or they're probably just going to want more money and we can't afford to increase salaries. It was simple stuff like brighter lighting.
Yeah. Instead of the cheap light bulb, get a different light. Yeah.
And so,
and you know what? I was just going to say, and your employee would tell you that if you asked them.
If you ask.
Yeah.
Instead of making these high-level decisions that impact people at all levels without any of their insight, that is how, you waste money, you waste time, you end up losing valuable players because you just didn't take the time to ask. So viability is all about making sure that you have tools to support people to do the things that they need to do, whatever they need to perform at their highest. What is that? How can we provide it? Even if we cannot provide all aspects, let's have a discussion about it. Guys, you all shared this thing would be really important. We value your opinion. However, our organization is not in a position to do this right now because this lets people know that they didn't just put something in a survey. They didn't just show up for a focus group just for you to say you did it. You actually took the time to consider their thoughts, consider their ideas, because if they don't feel that, they're not going to share in the future.
When you just gave me a different view of the viability part of it, because when you said it in the TED Talk, it made me start to think, okay, I have to have the viability, which means I have to have the skills and techniques to be a leader. So in essence, part of it has been able to ask, but skills and techniques to be a part of the leader, I need to have that toolbox full of those type of things. Not quite your point though, that you're making with viability.
Yeah, so you definitely want the skills to be an effective leader, but you don't have to start with them. You just have to be committed to developing them and being honest about the fact that you are developing. One of the worst things you can do is show up as a new leader or in a new space leading and pretending like you have it all together, pretending like you know exactly what you're doing. Just having an honest conversation with your team and saying, hey, we're learning and growing through this together. There are some areas I'm developing. I'm excited to push you all to develop some areas as well. So viability is about having the tools and skills and creating the gateway, creating the pathway to continue to develop those skills. But it's not all about you being the person who has all the skills, but also empowering your team to also find value in developing their skills as well. It's a joint venture.
Okay. That's okay. So that's wonderful. That says a lot. Tell me about E.
E is execution, because again, if you have the mindset, you got the outlook, you have the tools, it has nothing to do with execution.
Yeah.
It's just great ideas. That's it.
You got to do it.
You have to do it. And that is where the impact is. And that's what really sets some organizations apart from others, because some, they just hire consultants to come in and do assessments. And then they say, oh, we did such and such work. We did some employee engagement work. We did some DE&I work. But they just did an assessment. They don't do the implementation. They get a plan for how to implement, but they don't actually implement. And so what you do is you actually destroy the culture of your organization, because people, they're not going to openly share the things that you need to actually grow your organization in the way you desire, because they've shared before and you did nothing about it. You just kind of put on a facade as if you cared, but you didn't have the action to support it. So execution is all about the follow through and the feedback. It's not about just doing it, but making sure you revisit the things, revisit the objectives, and see where we are. Are we on track? You have some sort of compass to use to make sure that you are on the trajectory to doing the things that you set out to do.
Isn't that funny how all these kind of loop right back to each other? It's just, you can't really execute unless you have the mindset or the outlook. It's kind of unique how they all kind of wrapped up together and kind of labels back. That's I mean, that's why I asked you about the books that you've been reading and things like that for personal development, because that takes that energy, that thought process, the thought leadership to get that. And I'm sure that our listeners starting to hear why I said, go listen to this talk. But now we've gone deeper than the talk itself, but just to hear the talk is worthwhile. And we're going to go deeper because I want to ask you one other thing. Change the subject. Tell us about coffee.
I love me some coffee.
Yeah.
I do.
No doubt about it.
I love me some coffee. And I also love me some wine too, though. And so in the TED Talk, I do talk about how wine and coffee played into that whole story and scenario. And so sometimes when you're dealing with some things, you're going to need a little bit of coffee to get you through. Mm-hmm, and sometimes you're going to need a little wine to celebrate the fact that you got through it. So just even having those moments in your leadership journey, just honor, is this a coffee time or is this a wine time? But sometimes we just stick with the coffee. We achieve certain things. We hit certain milestones. And we just keep moving. We keep striving to the next thing. And we miss honoring the moment of what we have already accomplished. And
okay, stop. I got to stop you there because I want people to write that down and to understand that's a writable moment. It's not a tweetable moment. It's a writable moment. Sometimes we miss honoring our accomplishment.
Yeah.
And, if you want work-life balance, honor your accomplishments. But go ahead. I cut you off because that's what hit me, the coffee and the wine. That's why I wanted to bring that out. Because that was a very powerful part of your talk that I think some people might have said, oh, that's just cute. It's funny. It's unique. But go ahead and finish. I didn't mean to cut you off. Yes, I did.
Yeah, I mean, just being real, a lot of times these are topics that just don't come up. They're not threaded into our work or who we are as a person. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, like I said before, I'm committed to always showing up as my full, authentic self, regardless of what space I'm in. And the truth is, sometimes I'm going to need coffee. Sometimes I'm going to need wine. And guess what? I'm still a great leader, regardless of which one it is. And so don't beat yourself up about, do I need coffee? Do I need wine? Which one does it take?
Which one is it at the moment? Yeah. How do I honor myself to say, I need a little bit of coffee to power through, or I need a little bit of wine to say, hey, great job.
Right.
Love that. I'm glad you brought that out because that was one of my things I talk about, honor yourself. I like your wording better, coffee or wine. I like that a little bit better. I want to ask you, though.
You're the first person who's asked me about that, by the way. Well, I appreciate that.
Maybe because I listened to it 2.5 times in a row. so maybe that's why, because I just, it just, like I said at the start, it hit a chord with me after my illness and all those type of things. It hit a chord with me, but then the small things that you were saying turned out to be huge. So I hope everybody goes back and hears that. Even though we've unraveled it a little bit and started talking about different things and showing it, I think they need to go back and hear it. And I'll put it back up there. It'll be in the notes so that everybody can go listen to it. You need to go listen to it, and you need to make writable notes, not tweetable notes, but writable notes. Let me ask you, though, how are you helping people right now? What are you doing to make a difference?
I am showing up where my people are, where there's an express need for people being able to just develop the clarity and confidence to take powerful action, because we are in a time where there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty, and people are being thrust into new positions. Organizations are restructuring. All of these things are happening. And guess what? We're still people. We're still trying to process what has just happened to us over the past year or two. And even if the pandemic didn't happen, we are people. We always have things that are going on with us that we're trying to process as we push through as a professional. And so for me, I'm showing up in spaces, different companies, and providing safe spaces to help companies reconnect with their people so that they can keep more of their key players. And so that is where my heart is, because a lot of times you have people who show up, they speak, so elegantly. Everything is so properly enunciated, and I don't really focus on that. I mean, I have a few degrees, but that's not important. Transformation is what's important, and we're living in a time where people need real. They only connect with real. They've been through too much to try to even pretend to connect with the facades and connect with the just vanity. And so I focus on providing value over vanity. It may not be the pretty terminology that other people use, but it is definitely powerful. It is effective, and it creates change. And so that's what I'm doing. I visit colleges, invite me in, companies invite me in, and I create those safe spaces to learn more about their people and help their organizations and their leaders reconnect with their people so that they can re-engage with their work. You can't retain what you can't engage.
No, you can't. Absolutely. And see, I think people have to start getting the idea that this is going to be authentic. This is, and I oftentimes ask people when they say authentic, what do you mean? You demonstrated it. Coffee, wine. Okay. That's truly demonstrable. This is authentic. Do I need my cup of coffee or do I need my glass of wine? And how does that play through to become a better leader, a visionary leader? How does that play through to keep your employees? How do people find you? I mean, if someone's writing down right now, how do they find you to come in and chat with them about your organization? I noticed that you had a free 30-minute consultation with you. Let's skip that for the moment. This is the 30-minute consultation, and they say, hey, I want to work with you. How do they do it?
Go to BrittanySherell.com and just schedule a call the time that fits best for you. And I'm going to ask you some questions so that we can make the most of our time together. You know, I believe in being a good steward of your time. So just pick a time that works best for you and answer a few questions so we can make the most of our time. And then we'll co-create a vision together.
Okay. So check the show notes, BrittanySherell.com, and just go there. It'll happen for you real fast, real easy, real simple. Another kind of a question for you, and I want to come back to something too, but how did this TED Talk or change your life? I mean, given it, how did it change? I mean, a lot of people say, well, it didn't really change anything. It does. But then, so how did it change yours?
For me, I think it really just gave me a lot more. Like I said before, I always show up as my authentic self in whatever spaces I go in, but it gave me a broader platform to share how authentic you can be in the workplace and outside of work, how it all intertwines together. Because here's the thing, I can go to different places, right? But honestly, when you do a TED Talk, it establishes a sense of credibility for your message. And so because, you know, it's highly respected. And so for me, it really changed the way I pursued certain things. Because honestly, a TED Talk was something I probably envisioned for myself.
Yes.
10 years, 15 years down the line. I saw someone speak on stage years ago. Actually, I wasn't even live. My school district played a recording of her, and I was like, I think I would like to do that one day. At the time, I wasn't even professionally speaking or anything. And it's only been maybe 3-4 years since that moment. And it kind of went to the back of my mind. And I was like, whoa, I'm really out here doing it. And so just for me, it stretched me in terms of recognizing even some of those big goals that you have for yourself. They're probably not even as big as we make them seem if we just do the work to actually even, like, have you even looked? If you say you want a house, have you even gone to a neighborhood to see what kinds of houses you want? Have you even checked to see what your credit score needs to be? Have you checked to see what your down payment is? Are there special programs available? So what is it that you want? Instead of leading with what it is that you think you might need, lead with what it is that you want and then work backwards.
That right there is another perfect analogy for the leadership equation. What you said earlier is that, you know, you got to question what your assumptions, what your values are. You got to question those. And if you're sitting at home thinking about, or sitting in your apartment, but I want to buy a house, but I can't afford it. question that statement. Oh, I don't have a high enough credit score. I don't have enough down. Question that statement, because like you said, there's programs out there where the homeowner may require 15% down, but the city's going to pay 12% of that. There's one like that in Denver. I mean, that's all I can think. By the way, where are you right now?
South Carolina.
Oh, okay, South Carolina. South Carolina. Okay, great. Now, I have one more question for you. This is a hard question, and I'm not going to let you off the hook until you give me a good answer for it. Okay? But what question should I have asked you that I did not ask you?
Maybe, what is the mindset that helps you develop the confidence to put yourself in uncomfortable spaces? Like, what is that mindset that allows you to connect with people who are you consider outside of your realm or out of your norm? What is the mindset you approach it with?
And that would have been a great question, because you did that when you told your doctor, I don't want to hear any of that. I mean, how often do we challenge our doctors to sit there and say, hey, I don't want to hear any of that. I'm getting my eyesight back 100% plus more. What mindset, what caused that? What mindset, what to get that confidence to say that? Because that was certainly out of your realm. Did you go to medical school for 12 years?
Absolutely not.
But you had the confidence to say to that doctor, no, 100% or better.
Yeah. So honestly, when you're talking about having the confidence to speak to people, connect with people, share your views, your vision with people who you feel like are outside of your norm, out of your realm, you just have to recenter yourself and understand that they are people. It doesn't matter if they're the CEO. It doesn't matter if they are the founder and, have all of these executive titles. It does not matter. At the end of the day, I know for me, when I was starting to build my business, I would feel intimidated sometimes, especially when you're moving out of the education industry into working in a corporate setting. It's a whole different landscape. And so I was kind of intimidated. I was like, I don't really want to reach out to these people, like the CEO, the VP, the COO. Like, I don't really want to reach out to these people. And I had to learn that they are just people. They like coffee too.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are just people. And then I need to facilitate conversations with them with that mindset. These are people too. Not focusing on the title, not focusing on the profession, not focusing on the platform. Yeah. These are people just like me.
Got to really appreciate that. They're just like you. And that gives you the mindset, the level of confidence once you realize that. That's powerful. Brittany, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today. I want to respect everybody's time and let them know that this is one that you need to listen to twice. Go back and listen to her TED Talk. This is why we do these. So the synergy and the passion of that person who delivered that TED Talk goes a long ways in developing them. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Glenn. I appreciate you.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to hang on because I want to talk to you real quick after our closing statement. But for everybody else, guys, thank you.
Thank you for connecting with us here at Touchstone Publishers. Please join our group Essential Leadership Skills and share your leadership knowledge with us all.